Welcome back and continue to watch the videos about CSS. The previous videos has shown how document structures and CSS selectors can be defined. This video will discuss about the mechanisms of how to specify further as well as inheritance and the cascading. We like to explore more about specificity. Now we have a source code of the CSS here. There are 6 rules. Notice that the first 2 rules, they are all about H1. Which one should be applied? Similarly, we have the 3rd and the 4th rule. They are both for H2. Which one should be applied also? Here, we learn about this, and at a later stage, I hope that you know which rule should be applicable in that particular source code. We may have multiple CSS rules being applicable for a certain set of elements at the same time. How we can decide which rule should be used? Here we come down to the rules of specificity. There are a number of guidelines here. For every ID attribute value given in a selector, add 0, 1, 0, 0. For every class attribute value, attribute selection, or pseudo class given in the selections, we have 0, 0, 1, 0. For every element and pseudo element given in the selector, add 0, 0, 0, 1. Now, combinators and the universal selectors do not contribute anything to the specificity. Now notice that what I just mentioned, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, those are representing some sort of coordinates to represent how specific of the class or the elements. Here we like to look at some examples of how we can assign the coordinate values for different CSS elements. H1, color red. And H1 is an element. So we have 0, 0, 0, 1 because H1 is the first element. Look at the second rule. PEM. EM is the element that we want to associate with the rule. On the other hand, notice that EM is also the second element in the CSS source file. So we have not only 0001, but then we have 0002. Now take a look at the number 5 rule. P.bright space em.dark. So what is the specificity of that particular CSS rule? Well, the answer is 0022, which is the second class as well as the second elements here. Well, we like to understand more about universal selector specificity. Universal selectors does not contribute to the specificity of a selector. Here we have some examples. Example 1, a paragraph element descends from a DVD element will be black. And then this is the coordinate 0002 being associated. The other example is all other elements will be gray. Because of the universal selector definition, then the specified coordinates will be only 0000. Now when we look at the second example, we have dvi space p, and that the associated coordinate is 0002. For the combinators, they should have no impact on the selectors in the overall specificity. That is why the body star storm we have only associated with, again, 0002. Now we'd like to look into the ID and attribute selectors, how we can specify the coordinates. Here we have two rules for example 1. In rule number 1, HTML greater than body, table, tr, td, ul greater than li is more specific in terms of the hierarchy. The second rule is li palm answer. Palm answer is giving you an ID. And because ID has a high priority in terms of the coordinate values, so the li palm I answer would have a high priority to be applied in that particular CSS rule. So when we take a look at the bottom, then we have the coordinate value 0, 1, 0, 1, which is in fact a winner in comparison with the previous one. The previous one is 0, 0, 1, 7. This is also the true thing for example 2. In example 2, we have the medal. Medal is being used in the first rule of example 2 as an ID. But in the second rule, medal is being used as a class. So therefore, we conclude that the first rule in example 2 will be applicable to the element. So far, we have not touched upon the inline style specificity. Now, the inline style would always take the highest priority at a time when we like to apply the CSS rules. Say, for example, we have h1 style equal to color :green. And this will take a high priority than the corresponding CSS file, which also specifying h1 as well. And here we have a second example, medal. So the medal in the inline style, the second line of the bottom example, would also take precedence in comparison with the CSS rule there. There are something interesting that we like to put the highest priority when we do a display. So we have something called importance. Decorations can be marked with important that would not have any specific coordinate value, but instead they are considered separately from non-important decorations, and it always wins to be displayed. Now, when we like to specify the important parameter in a CSS rule, it's noticed that it always goes to the end of the decoration, just before the semicolon, which marks the end of the property value pairs. We must place the important correctly, or the decoration will be invalid. Notice that important is not only this word. We do have the exclamation mark important altogether. Here we have one example of how important is being used in a CSS source file. Now, CSS rule can offer inheritance properties at a time when we define them. So here we have one example. The EM element will be colored in gray. Why? Well, because we have defined it in the CSS source file that h1 is of color gray, and h1 is the ancestors of EM in the given HTML code. So some of the properties would be inherited, but notice that some properties may not be inherent, for example, like border. So at the time when we develop an HTML source file, then we like to explore how the corresponding tree structure is and decided how we can define the CSS rules. We like to investigate what sort of other CSS properties at the time when we do the definitions. One of the interesting properties of CSS definitions is the cascade. We have two examples here, H1 color blue and H1 color red. Think which rule should be applied. Now, before deciding which rule should be applied in the previous line, we may want to know more about cascade. There are a set of guidelines here. Find all rules that contain a selector that matches a given element. Sort by explicit weight or declarations applying to the element. Sort by specificity or declarations applying to a given element. Those elements with a higher specificity will have more weight than those with lower ones. Sort by order all the declarations applying to a given element. Well, we like to go back to the two rules for the H1. And the rules are H1 color red and H1 color blue. Which one is of the higher order and being selected? You're right. Because of sorting by order, the color blue one will be selected at the very end.